right, welcome back, everybody. Now it's time for a grassroots citizen panel. And joining me in studio, as he did previously, is international security analyst, U.S. Marine retired, Major Mark Weintraub. Major Weintraub, thanks for being held over.
Good to be here.
Also in studio is Michael Hausum, I should say, commentator, international independent journal review columnist, and radio talk show host. Good to see you, Michael.
Thanks a lot, Rick.
And in studio also is sports radio talk show host, national news commentator C.S. Keys. C.S., what's up with your Raiders this year?
We ain't got to talk about that right now. But I do like what I've been seeing in Derek Carr, and I do like what I've been seeing the last couple of weeks. They could have had a couple wins so far this season, but they haven't. But it'll come.
All right.
Appreciate it, Rick. Thanks for having me back.
love to pound on the Raiders. All right. Speaking of football, speaking of Ebola, I had to find a transition somewhere. Major Weintraub, you just returned from Dallas. You went to see your hometown New York Giants play the Cowboys. Did you wear a hazmat suit?
No, I didn't. In fact, you will not notice any kind of hysteria going on in Dallas right now. The media would love that to be the case, but it's clearly not the case.
So you think we're overreacting?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the media?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I think the doctors are professionals. They told us how it's transmitted. Unless you're in direct contact with these people, unless you're at, performing healthcare duties, you really don't have much to worry about.
Here's what I don't get, Michael Hausum. Those on the left are saying we're overreacting, and Major Weintraub thinks the media is drumming up the sensational card. Here's why people are reacting the way they are. First, we have President Obama comes out and says there's no chance it'll come to our shores. 2 weeks later, it does. First person who gets it dies. Then he says you can't get it by being on a bus. The day after a bus is quarantined. But let's get down to facts. The World Health Organization predicts 10,000 new cases per week by December, 6 weeks from now. The United Nations warns that we have 60 days to beat it. The death rate among Ebola is 70%, has been bumped up to 70%. How's that overreacting?
Well, I frankly don't see it's overreacting at all. I mean, what government agency are we going to have confidence in? I mean, my opinion is that the CDC is basically the DMV with face masks, right? I mean, so when that guy comes out and says anything at all, my first thought is, yeah, let's try to get some information from somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. I mean, the administration's approach to it was clearly stated when they put, what's the guy's name, Kane, to be the Ebola czar?
They were raising Kane, yeah.
Well, exactly.
Ron
I mean, 100% of his experience is management of political campaigns. Right. They're not trying to solve a crisis. They're not trying to confront one. They're trying to manage the narrative on it.
Before we go to CS, Major Weintraub wants to say something.
I blame the media a little too much, actually.
Now we're coming around.
Yeah. Clearly, the administration's approach to the problem really set it off, because they were all over the map in what was going on over there, the threat here, and then you had the CDC director basically telling our country that no, we can't restrict travel from there because it would hurt the West African economies. Excuse me, sir. Since when did your job is to the health of the American people?
Right.
When did you put West African economists on your business card? I couldn't imagine.
Let's go to CS Keys related to that. The administration is saying we are not going to ban travel to West Africa. You say because of the economy, but the real issue here is they're saying that we don't want to be seen as intolerant. We don't want to be seen as people that close our borders to other cultures. That's frightening.
Well, it's not about being intolerant. It's about saving lives. If like I was saying in the break, if Utah, and not to point out Utah, but just an example, if there was something going on in Utah that would kill me, I'm not going there.
Right.
And for the most part, I had Dr. Bruce Lee, which you had on your show.
Yeah,
he was on my show this past week, and he was saying how people should not travel to South Africa. In fact, this past week in Southern California, there was a student who was on the plane with one of the nurses who had Ebola, and she had some flu-like symptoms. They shut the entire school down.
Right.
Because they didn't know what was going on. The students were contained and everything else until they found out she just had flu.
Yeah, I don't know why we can't have charter flights to West Africa.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, their reasoning doesn't make any sense on any level. I mean, they're saying we need to keep the travel open because that way we can track the people who are moving around. And so instead of 150 people making into our border from into our country from that part of the world, then maybe only 5 would make it. So
right.
I still like those odds better.
All right, we're going to switch. I do too. We're going to switch gears now. Let's take a look at this video of President Obama.
I believe that marriage is the union between a man and a woman.
I do not support gay marriage, but I support a very strong version of civil unions.
All right, we'll get reaction of President Obama saying one thing and then saying another thing. We'll get your reaction on the other side of the break. But as we do, let's take a look at this video of President Obama.
American exceptionalism, just as I suspect that the Brits believe in British exceptionalism and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism. I believe in American exceptionalism with every fiber of my being.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're in the middle of our grassroots citizen panel. Just before the break, we saw President Obama years ago saying that he does not support same-sex marriage. Now he comes out and says gay marriage is a constitutional right. We saw him saying that he believes in American exceptionalism, just as the Brits and Greeks believe in British exceptionalism. Then he goes to West Point and says, I believe in American exceptionalism with every ounce of my body, whatever the phrase was.
Every fiber of my
Every
being.
fiber of my being. Major Weintraub, U.S. Marine retired. You offended by that?
I'm not surprised. Politicians, finger in the wind. You know, the wind's blowing one way, gets him elected in 2008. The winds change in 2012. He does what it takes.
I get shades of gray. This was a 180.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, to this day, no one of us should be surprised that President Obama pulls these 180s. I mean, this is at least a half a dozen to a dozen.
What do you think the audience reaction? I mean, there was no loud reaction, but at West Point, what do you think those guys and women, those guys were sitting there thinking as that was?
Well, there's subdued, you know, respect. Let's put it that way. He's commander-in-chief. Do they need to cheer him on with all their enthusiasm? No, but they obviously need to show the respect for the office.
Michael Hausum, he says gay marriage is a constitutional right. I mean, no matter where you stand on it, is this a bit of a stretch here?
Well, he is a constitutional lecturer, as you recall. And I think that I would support him no matter what he said, no matter how many dimes he turned on. Okay? Is this turning on a dime for political opportunism? Of course it is. And it's not to be unexpected. So I'd say par for the course.
CST's President Barack Obama, should the American people have any faith and confidence in what he says?
He's a politician. Over the past 20, 30 years, how much faith do you think the American people have in politicians? I told you guys in the break, I'm going to come back as a politician because all you're doing is voting for the best liar. So for the most part, he's doing what he needs to do as far as to appease whoever he needs to appease. But it's not surprising. I mean, he's a politician.
You know what that is to me, Rick? It's the idea that what the three of us just basically said, which is, the four of us, you included, exactly. that principles don't mean anything. We expect the politician to lie. That having a vision that's consistent and communicating that vision, nobody expects that anymore. I mean, that actually is pathetically, horrifically sad.
It's a great point you bring up. And, you know, I referenced this earlier in the show. There was a major article out today at National Journal by columnist Ron Fournier, political analyst, who said that we are at a point in history in America right now where after this midterm election, we're going to see the rise of a third party, the rise of independent grassroots bottom-up candidates. That's where America is today. Up until now, of course, third-party candidates haven't been able to survive. They've been too much on the fringe. Whether or not his prediction comes to be, time will tell. But it's interesting that a journalist of his ilk, if you will, is now saying that. And I think it's consistent with what each of us have said here today. You want to say something?
Well, I mean, we've actually seen a little bit of that, actually. If you want to go back to the beginnings of the Tea Party,
I agree.
The Tea Party didn't go after their opponents. They went after people in their party that were not basically representing their values. So they replaced their own, their own side of the aisle. You never see that on the left. The left just goes after the right. They don't go after their own people now, but that might start to change soon.
I was at a social event over the weekend, and someone who's on the far left came up to me and said, "Hey, look, I know you've spoken, you've moderated, hosted 40, 50 Tea Party events across America over the last few years. Aren't they racist? How do you associate yourself with that?" I said, "Look, you've bought into the attack, the narrative. What people don't realize that T is an acronym for taxed enough already.
Exactly.
And so anyway, you brought that up. I thought I'd mention it. Speaking of turning on a dime, I'm going to do so figuratively and literally. Ray Rice, running back in NFL, can turn on a dime. There's a report out, some say it's not accurate, but it's everywhere right now, saying that Ray Rice could be back within the NFL within a month. We've got to go to our obligatory radio sports talk show host, C.S. Keys. What's your take on that whole story?
First of all, his appeal has got to be heard because he's going to appeal the so-called lifelong suspension. In the NFL, it's all about winning. And if you have a player who can help you win games, he can benefit your team. But the only difference with Ray Rice, and I don't see it happening in a month. I don't see it happening in a year, to be honest with you, because that video just destroyed him. The only thing about Ray Rice is he's going to have to go, if he's accepted to a team, a very strong team that has a very strong management, very strong ownership, because you're going to have so much backlash with women's rights groups, just groups, period, because of what they saw. It was so, it was just ridiculous what we saw, and his reaction in and out of the elevator.
What do you say to those that say, well, Michael Vick came back successfully?
That's a totally different story. Michael
Why?
Vick served his time in a federal penitentiary. 2 years in a federal penitentiary. And then on top of that, when he came out, he tried to make restitution by being a spokesperson for animal activists and things of this manner.
Do you think Michael Vick truly knows what he did wrong? Do you think
yeah. When you lose your freedom and you're in a federal penitentiary for 2 years, you had over $100 million contract. And next thing you know, you're in jail. Yeah, he knows what he did wrong. And he realizes it now. It may have been something as he grew up, he was used to, because now I went to school down south, and dog fights, cockfights, all these kind of things took place. He may have thought it was okay.
Yeah.
But he knows now he did something wrong.
When that
before we go on, I want to mention this real quick. You said that Rice may have to sit out a year, with...
Well, he's suspended indefinitely, so to speak.
It's one thing for a quarterback to sit out a year. It's another thing for a running back.
Yeah.
You want to say?
Sure. No, well, when that happened, Michael Vick, you would think, there was nothing worse you can do than torture dogs, as far as your reputation in the American community. But like CS said, he went to prison. He paid his dues. He's basically done whatever he can to make restitution for what he was doing. With Ray Rice, he got this sweetheart deal from the DA's office. He hasn't paid any dues whatsoever.
Great point.
I think there's not a single chance the NFL reinstates him, probably for at least something similar to Vick's sentence.
Before we go to Michael, coming back, you're a Raider fan. If there's one team that would take a Ray Rice, a lot of hate mail out there. I could see the Raiders doing.
The history of the Raiders, we take some delinquents. But you also have to understand too, and this is kind of sitting on the fence here. Every person has a right to earn a living in the United States or anywhere.
Right.
This is what he does as a profession. He plays football. He trained for it all his life. So it's kind of like you're sitting on both sides of the fence. You want to make sure a person has the right to earn the land of second chances. But then again, what he did was so egregious that you really can't comprehend him coming back to the league, though he has a right to earn a living.
Michael Hauser.
I would disagree with you that football nowadays is all about the winning. I think that's an important part of it. It is a business, but the NFL is the most politically correct organization of all the professional sports leagues right now. I mean, Roger Goodell he's not just about making money and making a living.
Did you see the image out today with those that get poolside seating in Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium? I don't know what the name of the stadium is. What their view is?
No.
Let's just say skimpily clad bikini bottom cheerleaders right in front of the window for those sitting there. I don't know if that's politically correct.
Well, I'd be a fan of that, frankly. But I mean, the NFL there's a lot of symbolism involved, and it's more than just the W and the L column that these guys have to take into account. I mean, it's not just ticket sales, but there's all other kinds of things that go along with it. And I think that the question is going to be more than just how many yards a game is he going to be able to get.
I'm not 100% certain the NFL is full-blown politically correct. I know
They're trying to be.
They go out of their way to basically
are.
try and hold a pristine reputation. There's very few organizations that actually go to those lengths that the NFL does.
And we're out of time, CS. I know you want to say something.
I was going to say, I find it interesting that this year, every year after the Super Bowl, they make a big deal out of how many domestic violence cases there are. I want to see this year what they say.
Wow. Wow.
Right, good
Okay.
point.
I want to thank our grassrootsism panel, Major Mike Weintraub, columnist Michael Hausum, and radio sports radio talk show host C.S. Keys. I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King Jr., joins me tomorrow. We're back at you tomorrow, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific.